if you lived in Washington, D.C., you had no option but to be aware of segregation.
In what way were you aware?
Well, Washington had segregated schools. You could not go to the theaters. You could not go to the restaurants, but you could ride the public transportation. The streetcars were desegregated. The Lincoln Memorial, Library of Congress, you could go. You could get the books on a desegregation, go to the public library, but you couldn't eat there, and you couldn't go to the theaters. So it was very clear. The one thing I like to talk about Washington, D.C., Washington, D.C. probably had the largest black middle-class population during the time that I grew up. It was an integral city. We didn't even know or think about white folks. Basically, we had our schools, our churches, our restaurants, our businesses, our theaters, everything, our plumbers, our electricians, everything we could talk about was an integral black community. Had a lot of pride. We had different social classes, but there was a lot of pride there. The interesting thing about my upbringing, I lived on a block that was half black and half white. The reason is, during the time of the Depression, when blacks started moving in, whites were trying to move out. But with the Depression, the crash, they couldn't get mortgages. So the bottom half of our block, from 11th going toward 13th Street, was primarily black professionals and middle-class people. The upper part of the block, with the exception of one person I'll tell you about, was mainly working-class white folks who, because of the prejudice, wanted to get out. We had practically no interaction with them except on the playground, which was around the corner where we'd play ball, and the black kids and the white kids would play against each other, not necessarily on the same team. And at the corner of 13th and Girard, the famous Dr. Montague Cobb had his house. The reason he was able to purchase it, as you know, he was very light-skinned.
Yes.
And when he purchased it, they didn't know he was black. But as a kid, I used to cut Dr. Cobb's grass. So I'd go up this block with my lawnmower and cut the grass with Dr. Cobb, past all these racist white people. And I might say, I don't know whether they were necessarily racist. They were following the traditions of the time. Some of them did call us nigger, and we got them straight real quick because we used some ethnic comments that related to their background. So that
you
stopped
were
that.
not intimidated by that.
So we were not intimidated.
Yes.
So it was a very interesting time to be alive.
Now, in terms of, because I'm from Washington, D.C. as well, but I was born in 1944, and of course segregation was still very much institutionalized. What I want to know is, was there a color issue amongst black people in Washington, D.C. during the time that you grew up? Because when I grew up, there were mostly light-skinned black people who were middle income.
Well, that is very true.
It's still, it was
the color
true then,
situation
too.
was probably worse then, but the war helped to change some of it, so the more people in the South, many of them darker complexion, came in with professions and trades and so on. But the color issue was an issue, and it was one that my father was so light that he could actually be considered white. And when he traveled many times, he just went and bought a ticket without saying whether he was black or white. But they taught us, my parents taught us, everybody had a right to be who they are, and everybody had skills. There were some people who were positive, some people who were negative, of all colors. So I, in particular, was one of the outspoken people against the color barriers, the color codes in terms of social clubs. I had many friends, most of my friends were dark-skinned, and basically I really objected to that. That's one of the things I did not like about Washington, D.C., which was one reason when I went to college in Springfield, Massachusetts, I really never came back.
To D.C.
To D.C. I went to Dunbar High School, and there it's a school of meritocracy, but in some ways it was a school of contact. So the people who got in were the people with the middle class, but there were a number of darker-skinned black folks. Matter of fact, the best students in our class were people of definite color. And we worked through that, and some of us really did not like that, and I in particular was very outspoken against that.